This is Made to Build by the HIA, the podcast that gets into real stuff that matters in residential building. The wins, the lessons, and practical tips from people shaping the industry today. Luke from Callery Building, welcome on board.
Absolute pleasure to be here. So I think a good starter for anyone that's interested in getting into that space is probably to do the Green Smart course. It's really, really addictive and you dive headfirst into the rabbit hole and you just cannot go back.
Are these key principles shaping some of the builds that you do now?
It's about like the little one percenters. You're never going to change it completely overnight. And my favourite saying at the moment is new level, new devil. We're finding actually a lot of homeowners are coming to us that are educating themselves.
Are there cost-effective ways to do this?
The biggest mistake most people make is they get focused on the material finishes, the aesthetics of what it's going to look like. The most important thing is to get the thermal envelope correct.
So you're really working to pay it forward for the future.
For sure.
Could you summarise this into 3 key points?
So first one would be networking, ask questions, do your research. Second one, definitely invest in business coaching. I think the biggest one and the most important one that you really need to understand is knowing your numbers.
Owen, good to see you again, buddy.
Fellow co-host, we have a great episode today. Someone that we haven't really had this style of builder on yet, so...
No, absolutely.
Can you introduce us?
I'm really excited to introduce Luke from Callery Building. Luke's an HIA member, but you started off, Luke, as a carpenter, and now you're a business owner. And we want to unpack that journey and the incremental steps that you took throughout that time when you did that. So, welcome on board.
Thank you, Richard, Owen. Absolute pleasure to be here. It has been an interesting journey to get to where we are, and I'm sure we'll dig into that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, mate. Just for people listening, can you just give us a bit of an outline of your background and the journey that you've taken so far?
Yeah, so in a brief, carpenter by trade, did my time, started back in about 2009, I reckon it was. Sort of got thrown in the deep end once I'd finished my apprenticeship. It was a bit of an interesting time in the industry. Growing up in a country town as well, there wasn't a lot of work on, so I sort of got almost left without a job and sort of had to get a contractor's license and an ABN and start subcontracting straight away. So absolutely no experience. It was quite scary. Had to learn very quickly, contracted for a few years and then, just decided that I always had an absolute passion for building and wanted to eventually run my own show. So 2017, we made that happen and got my residential builder's license. Unrestricted value up to 2-story, and just progress through from there.
So for the people from New South Wales, we don't really have that. So can you, like residential 2-story up to any value? Is there a specific license for types of builds in Victoria?
Yeah, there is. And I'm glad you brought that up actually, Owen, because that's, I guess I speak to a lot of builders around the country with what I do, being involved in coaching groups and another side platform that I've got.
Yep.
And it seems that whilst we are one country, there are so many different regulations, licensing types, insurance requirements throughout the country. So I'm not sure exactly how you guys have it over here in New South, but so we basically have different types of licenses. I know you can get like smaller renovation style licenses. Mine, I didn't have one before that. I had a carpentry contractor's license that I'd had a few extra things on there that I'd got in the early stages, like waterproofing and roofing, external cladding, that sort of stuff, to then be able to have a few runs on the board when I went for my next style of license. That I just went straight up to the restriction up to 2-story, but there was no sort of limitation on whether it was a specific extension or a new home. It was just sort of capped at the rise of the project, if you call it.
So you couldn't go do a 3-story build?
No.
Currently?
No, and I don't think I really want to be honest with you. Two seems to be enough. We've got a few challenging 2nd-story additions that we do at the moment. I think 2's enough. I think the biggest difference, what you get restricted with on what you can build, comes down to the insurance. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm only speaking on the South Australian experience here, but with your builder's warranty insurance, you can only go up in like maximum project limitations and turnover limitations for the year. So whilst you get a license that you can cover up to build up to a 2-story, you might only have a restriction that the maximum project value could only be 500,000 or $1 million or 1.5 or whatever that may be. So,
what's the next stage of your license?
I don't know, mate. That's a good question. I've never really looked into it. We're sort of in a comfortable bracket where we are, and just the way that things are going. I guess it may be just up to 3-story or 4-story or something like that, maybe.
Do you need an entire different license to go into, say, low-rise commercial or unit
Low-rise,
development?
yeah, commercial definitely. Commercial is a different license, and that has been brought up quite a lot in most recent times. Sort of, would we be interested in going into commercial? But I don't know. My passion's always been in residential. You get that more personal connection with the homeowner, growing families that you're transforming their lives, and you lose that personal touch with a commercial project.
So it's very much a personal experience with yourself, your company, and the way that you run the project?
Yeah, for sure.
Can you unpack that a bit more about your process?
Yeah. So I guess majority of our clients, they are growing families. We find that they're needing more space.
Is that in younger kids in the family? Or?
Yeah, younger kids, they've outgrown the current home, or they've just moved into a new home, and it might only be a small cottage, and they're needing more open plan living or something like that to be able to fit the family. So yeah, I guess starting in the early days from the process, we try and collaborate from day one if possible, and sort of work through the design concept stage with the homeowner to sort of then be able to sort of guide from buildability as well as affordability as well. I know there's some pretty incredible softwares out there at the moment, like Richard's got with ProCalc that can do that. But if it's not available for anyone out there, we sort of try and collaborate in that process to try and sort of guide it in the right direction from the start.
You mentioned before we came on that you've done a license, or you're going to do your license in passive housing.
Yes, yeah. So I've just finished, probably, I think it was just before Christmas, I did my passive house tradesperson's course. I've got the exam for that. It's coming up in April this year. So
You nervous?
Terrified.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was actually for anyone that hasn't done it, anyone that has, you know what I'm talking about, but it's the depth that it goes into, it's really scary actually. Some of the formulas and the calculations that you need to sort of go through to be able to understand how a building performs, how different materials react and glazing and wall makeups and things like that. It's full on.
Can you give us some examples of that?
I can't remember the exact words off the top of my head. I'll have to go back through.
Is it like how airtight the building is, or how well it retains its
baseline
temperature?
With the certification for a passive house, everything's measured. So when you go on air tightness, you have to be under 0.6 air changes an hour, which is super airtight. So air changes an hour it's a unit of measure to tell how airtight a house is. So it gets performed by you install a temporary door, for one of a better word, into an external door. So shut all of your external doors and windows. All your internal doors are open, and you install a fan in an external door. You run that up to negative 50 pascals, so you draw the air out of the house, and then it gets measured. An air change an hour is how many times in 1 hour the entire volume of air inside that room or building is completely extracted and replaced with outside air. So obviously the lower the number, the more airtight. So air will be coming back in then through gaps, cracks, like leaks in your windows and through your floors and things like that. Yeah.
So for builders who are listening to this and they're thinking about heading down that passive house path, what sort of steps do they need to take to ready themselves for this sort of thing? And what's the process that you're going through that they can prepare themselves for?
Yeah, so I don't know that there's really a right pathway to do it. Probably my best advice is to just start networking. I absolutely hate plugging social media, but the resources and the amount of people that are doing it on Instagram and things like that are putting themselves out there, showing what they're doing. There's so much that you can learn from that, or at least to get a few ideas. That's sort of where I got into it, was through.
But there would be courses or and what's the regulatory aspect of it?
So as far as a course, I did mine through the Australian Passive House Association, is the Passive House tradesperson course. I think probably if you're not necessarily looking to getting into building a passive house, if you generally want to do better, this is a bit of a plug for the HIA here, the Green Smart course.
I was going to say they offer a lot of courses like that.
They do.
The new NCC 7-star ratings, like you said, passive housing.
Yep.
Have you done any of them?
I've done the Green Smart course. I can't remember how long ago it was, but did the Green Smart course. That was a really good insight to it, which is probably because understanding passive house isn't for everyone. There's a huge expense that goes with it, and not everyone wants or needs a passive house. So I think a good starter for anyone that's interested in getting into that space is probably to do the Green Smart course, because it's a good introduction into just better building methods, things like how your windows perform, shading orientation, passive solar design, because there's a lot that can be done with that. Just the orientation of a house, how the sunlight gets let into the house during summer and winter, being able to shade those areas. So the Green Smart course is probably a really good intro.
Are these key principles shaping some of the builds that you do now?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. There's a lot to be it's the style of building that once you start to learn a little bit about it, it's really, really addictive, and you dive headfirst into the rabbit hole, and you just cannot go back. Once you start to learn about how poor performing buildings actually react with if walls are built incorrect, and how condensation and moisture buildup can end up in walls and roofs and things like that, it's absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
So there's
a lot of builders have aged like 10 years since these new standards have come out. How can you best comfort them in moving into these passive house principles?
I think they're never going to achieve it overnight. So I think it's just if you're doing the best that you can at the time, and I guess research what you can and implement just the smallest steps, eventually you will come to that. It's about like the little 1%ers. You're never going to change it completely overnight. So as long as you do that one little bit better each day or each project, if you then maybe use a different window supplier and use a better quality window, or the next job you might use a better quality wall or roof wrap. You might change the wall thickness up, and you might put bigger bulk insulation in it.
Talking about those 1% improvements, I mean, for example, I think a lot of people listening to this, they would have gone through that journey from carpenter to business owner. So not just carpenter to builder, but carpenter to business owner, which is a massive journey, because let's face it, when you're out framing up on site, you're not taught how to run a spreadsheet.
No,
that's not, or a balance sheet, or whatever it may be. That's not the goal of doing your apprenticeship. So when you start making that transition, when you did it yourself, and we're all learning in the way that we do these things, what's been your approach, and what do you sort of recommend as the way of doing it?
Very, very interesting topic, Richard, because it is, I think I've got a very strong opinion on it, that there is not enough education out there on how to run a business before you can actually get a builder's license.
Bingo.
And the scary part is, like, the clients that you're working for, this could be the biggest, if not the biggest investment that they're ever going to make in their life.
Yep.
The risk that a builder takes on, it's quite scary, actually. So there needs to be, I don't know what the answer would be, but there needs to be something done, I think, whether it's extra CPD points or something like that, to be able to then have more requirements that a builder needs to show experience in, that they can actually run a business before they start, dealing with homeowners' life savings. So I guess
it's high stakes.
It's huge. Yeah.
So when you talk about the 1%ers, I mean, what does that look like?
So I guess for me, I got lucky in the early stages, I suppose. I had a couple of older builders that we did some contract carpentry for, that they would sort of offer a little bit of mentoring for me. I think the best thing you can do is ask questions. Don't be afraid. You're never going to get a right or a wrong answer. And don't be afraid to ask those questions to multiple resources as well, because the way that you might get that answer back, whilst it might be the same answer, it may be said in a different way, and you may interpret it in a different way.
Have you experienced that? Exactly.
Absolutely, yeah. And it comes back to with, I guess, when you're in the form of business coaching or builders coaching as well. So I've been involved in a builders coaching group for the last coming up 3 years now. I think there's, if you're in that scenario where you're looking at getting some business coaching as well, I don't think you necessarily need to hone in on one specific one. Like, don't go just on one person's recommendation. Like, do your own research and explore the other options that are out there, because that coaching platform, they may also offer different advice than what others do. And it's
a body of knowledge,
and it's a very individual thing. But like I said, you will interpret it in a different way when, someone may say it to you in a different way. They might change a word up here or there, and it might be that light bulb aha moment where you go, right, such and such did tell me that a while ago, but now that you've said it that way, I really understand it now.
Yeah. What are some of the things that have really stuck out to you in the when it comes to business coaching? Like, what are some of the core lessons that you've really learned that you might share with people?
Great question. I think the biggest one and the most important one that you really need to understand is knowing your numbers.
Okay.
There's so many people out there that, one of my biggest frustrations with the industry is, well, we get branded that there are industry standards or industry percentages that we can apply as builders margins and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Every business is so unique in their own. Like compared to me, we have 9 employees at the moment. Our overheads are X amount. The builder down the road, he might only have him and an apprentice working out of his back shed. Your overhead percentage is going to be different. Your business running costs are going to be different. So you can't label a industry standard percentage on a project. So you need to be able to understand what your business running costs are to then be able to apply the correct margin onto your job, rather than just throwing on 10% or 15%, whatever it may be, and hope for the best.
It's very different to the way that I remember when I got my builder's license a long time ago, but we were told, oh yeah, you do all your costs and then you just chuck on 20%.
Yeah.
And it's actually, you could start that way, but you can't run a business that way.
You can't run a business that way. And I had this conversation recently with someone as well, actually. It's not that long ago. I'm talking maybe 4 or 5 years ago that we were doing that. Back when I was on the tools heavily as well, I think that's the only reason we ever made any money. Because we were putting on there, I found some old spreadsheets. It was quite scary actually to look at how they got priced up. And looking at the percentage on the bottom, I'm thinking, how on earth did we ever even survive through that? And I think the only reason we did is because I was on the tools with the boys helping get the job built. I couldn't do that now because we've got office staff members as well. We've got all these extra off-site costs that there is no way that you could do it that way. So
reflecting back now, you can make that connection.
Yep.
What was the light bulb moment that made you think, okay, I have to go get training? I don't understand this enough.
I don't know that there was an exact light bulb moment. I just sort of knew I've always been one for wanting to better myself. It's just been a bit of a personal challenge for me. Always wanted to try and find either a better way to do it, a more efficient way to do it. So I've always just asked questions and explored different options. So I don't know. Yeah.
This really comes into scaling your business. For our listeners, could you summarize this into 3 key points as to how they could scale and improve their business if they have a similar model to you?
3 key points. I think definitely your first one is in 3 points of advice.
Yeah.
First one would be networking. Ask questions. You might not necessarily need to get those questions or answers from a builder's coach or a business coach, but there's a guy down the road that maybe, you may see what he's doing and think, I'm really interested to know how he's running it. They may not want to talk to you, and if they don't, well, that's bad luck because they may be a few key takeaways that you might be able to say back to him.
Spot on, yeah. It's a two-way street.
It's a two-way street for sure. Yep. So first one would be networking, ask questions, do your research. Second one, definitely invest in business coaching. And what level of coaching that may be, that's entirely up to the individual.
That's something I'd like to do one day. Where can I find something like that?
Online.
So is that the only avenue that you can do it through? Or
I think there are some. If I can just jump in there, I reckon there are many options in business coaching that are available to builders, and I think that if you focus on a resource that specialises in construction business coaching, that's probably the core requirement. I mean, I've gone through business coaching myself. I know what it's like when you get a generalist business coach. They're constructive, but the most constructive business coaches are those who focus purely on the building industry. They're actually going to give you, I believe, 2 or 3 times the value of a generalist coach.
Spot on.
Yeah.
So if I pull up my laptop now and I type in whatever it might be, what do I have to search to find that answer or find that right coach? Because there's so many people out there who advertise this same kind of narrative.
That's a really difficult question to answer because the answer would be a brand.
A brand?
Yeah.
Maybe start with Googling builders business coach and see what pops up.
Is that what you did?
Mine sort of actually come across, it was organic, like sponsored paid ads that just kept popping up on social media. And again, this may be...
That's how they get you.
If your phone's sitting here on the table, mate, you're going to get, next time you scroll through Facebook or Instagram, you're going to get ads pop up this afternoon. I guarantee it. What a world we live in.
Yeah, I think maybe.
Hey, you do a lot of stuff outside of the actual building and actually being on site, building yourself. Can you talk us through those engagements you make with other people in the industry?
For sure. Good one. So I guess through... A lot of my connections started through being a part of a builder's coaching group the networking with like-minded builders. And I think one of the key takeaways from being involved in a platform like that is being a builder, being a business owner, whilst you may have multiple staff, you might be working on your own or you may have multiple staff, it is still a very, very lonely business to be a part of. Like running of the business, because your employees are never going to understand it the same way that you do. They're never going to be invested the same way that you are. So running a building company is a very, very lonely place. So I think being in a group like that, being able to just have those conversations with what the struggles are. The business may be on a different level to you, but everyone has the same struggles. They go through the same issues. Everyone's always got cash flow issues. Everyone's got staffing issues. Everyone's got delays with projects. They might have price rises or material shortages. Everyone's got those same issues. So being able to bounce off and have that sort of that confidence and that network boosting to be able to.
Can I ask you, just thinking about it, you're talking about the tough journey that builders go on, and it is. It can be very lonely. It can be very. You can feel as though you're alone and not really. You don't necessarily have an understanding ear that you can lean into. In your experience, what do you think has been the toughest thing that you've ever had to encounter in your building career, and how did you address that? How did you overcome it?
Very interesting topic, because I was actually thinking about this not long ago. I don't know whether there's one specific that's been the toughest, but there's always a lot that because they come and go. The way that as your business progresses, you end up. I don't know. My favourite saying at the moment is "new level, new devil." Yep. What my biggest one would be at the moment we had a lot of growth last year. Our average staff turnover rate in the last sort of 2 or 3 years has only been 1 to 2 employees per year. Last year we had 7.
Yep.
I think the biggest challenge that we've got at the moment is people management, and that's always going to be on a different level as well, because getting those staff members to be as invested or understand what your personal business mission is, what the values are, what you expect out of them from a team culture. People management, I think, is our biggest challenge at the moment.
Can I ask, is that the back of the trade's expectations of you or your expectations of them?
I think a bit of both, but I'm more referring to in-house team members, actually. Just getting
accountants, designers.
The carpenters, supervisors,
okay.
back to project managers in the office. I think getting. I take a lot of responsibility for everything that's gone on lately, and I think I can't take all the responsibility, but it comes down to communication. The way that we've progressed individuals' roles within our company, then being able to make sure that every other employee understands what the new responsibility is of that specific team member as well, so that they're not stepping on each other's toes.
Yeah,
I think that's one of the main focal points is ensuring that you've always got crystal clear communication between all staff members, having regular toolbox meetings and workshops, and actually just sitting down, scheduling meetings and running through, whether it's building schedules or just have one-on-ones. We've got a staff questionnaire that we regularly hand out to people to get them, making sure that they're understanding what their personal role is in the business, what their goals are outside of work, and like personally and professionally, so that we can help them try and achieve those as well.
Yep. You said something earlier that was a little bit about. Sorry, we're both peppering you because we think that you've got a wealth of knowledge about this. It's really good, and I'm wondering whether when you used an expression before, which was "new level, new devil," and I love it. I've not heard that before, and I think it's really good. For people that are listening to this, what were the devils that you had to slay as you went through? Because if you start off at the first. Your first chore as a builder when you become a builder is to try and feed the family.
Yep.
Make sure that you've got a lucrative, or not lucrative, but it just pays for it's feasible.
Yeah. So I guess some of the early days, I suppose, if you're like a carpenter on the tools, you've the struggles that you've got or the devils that you've got is you'd run around and say you've got no time. Yep. You're too busy on the tools. Yep. You're quoting at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. You've got no time. You're working on the weekends trying to catch up because you're on the tools. As you progress, then moving forward, you hire more staff members. I've transitioned now off of the tools. I don't do anything on site. I'm probably lucky to attend site 1 or 2 times a week. Moving forward with that, then you've got, I guess, some of the devils that come with that is people management. You've got more people that you need to make sure that they understand what's expected of them. Then having that, I think maybe one of the biggest ones is letting go.
Yep.
Micromanaging. There's so many builders, and this, I'm sure everybody listening can relate to this, is being able to trust individuals in your company to do what you do. Because there are people out there that will be able to do specific tasks better than what you can for a hell of a lot cheaper than what you can do it for as well. And it's not, there's no right or wrong answer. I don't think there's an easy way to find those specific team members to fill those spots. But I think if you keep searching out there, putting your message out on what your values are and what you want to achieve out of business, eventually you're going to attract those people into your business, which we've fortunately been fortunate to have done recently. So I guess, yeah, that's, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. So really just trying to map out the journey, because there will be people listening to this that really are keen to hear about the journey that they've been through, and they might even want to say, all right, I think I'm up to this stage in the journey.
Yep.
And because as a builder, like you were saying before, when you're alone and you don't necessarily know what the road is, having those little benchmarks along the way, I think it's really helpful. So with that stage, what do you think would be the next stage? What would be the next devil? Do you know what?
For me, as we
yeah.
progress,
or maybe they haven't appeared yet.
I don't think they've appeared yet. I think we need to, this was a brief conversation that you and I had before as well, Richard, with jumping back to the builders coaching. I'm sort of at a point in what I've learnt out of the platform that I'm in. I really just want a bit of time to actually be able to implement what I've learnt properly. There's so many things that you can take away from business coaching that it can get really overwhelming. But again, it comes back to the little 1%ers about you'll learn all this stuff and you've got all these resources that are so readily available there. It can get super overwhelming. You don't know where to start. You think, geez, do I work on some of the costing stuff here? Do I work on the marketing? Do I work on the branding here? Do I work on... so it can be really overwhelming. But I think one of the most important things is to be able to at least schedule in a little bit of time each week, whether it's an hour, one afternoon, it might progress then to a couple of days a week. Just those little 1%ers, scheduling that bit of time to pick a point and work on it, whether you get through that one little piece of information and implement that before you move on. Because otherwise you're going to end up with all these open-ended things that you'll end up, it'll feel even more overwhelming, and you're probably going to start running the business worse because you've tried to implement these things, and what you may have been doing well before has now gone by the wayside because you haven't finished what you should have been doing previously already, and it can turn into a bit of a spiral.
Off the back of those 1%ers, there's a stigma in the industry around like tradespeople and specifically carpenters where they might not see their boss on site at all, really. And like you said, you only go on site once or twice a week. Do you think that played a part in having such a high turnover last year where the workers didn't feel valued?
I think maybe a couple, Owen.
Yeah.
Probably maybe a couple were definitely because of that. That's a really, really good point because that was always a struggle. I've learned to overcome that now, but I think there's a lot of people that can relate to that are going through that period at the moment that they are transitioning off of the tools. And I'm sure there's an apprentice or a tradesman that are on site and the boss is leaving and they're probably yelling out, oh, what are you going back to watch TV or you going shopping for the day or something, are you? And it can be a comment like that that can put you off for the whole day. It can ruin your momentum.
Can I just challenge that for a bit? Because
sure.
I reckon that if you're, as a builder, if you're employing anybody that you can't, that you feel as though you have to be there to give them the moral support or the guidance or the whatever for them to get the job done and feel good that they're doing the right job. I reckon you've employed the wrong person.
Right, yeah.
Don't employ
Absolutely.
them. If they're giving you that stuff, I won't use the word I was going to, but if they're giving you that stuff, do you even want them on your site?
No, I think you're dead right there. And I think that's we're in a fortunate enough position now that we've got some incredibly valuable team members that no one thinks like that.
Yeah.
Maybe from time to time one of the apprentices may think that, but it's everybody understands that I have an important role to do as well. If I'm not back in the office, if I'm not doing the sales, if I'm not estimating, they're going to finish what they're doing on that project and then they're going to go, oh, now what are we going to do? Luke's been on site too much and we don't have another project to continue on with.
So how can builders help? Sorry, mate.
This is on the back of what you said.
Yeah.
Before we move on, I entirely agree with you. But how do you think you can better educate people who are in this kind of mindset? And they might not be, you might not be in a place where you want to get rid of them because they might bring a lot to your team. You just need to shift their mindset. How can you best comfort these people?
How can you educate we'll use the example of a carpenter because that's the topic, but how can you educate the carpenter to understand all the other responsibilities that the builder has?
I don't know whether there's a simple answer for that. And I think you're going to potentially end up maybe in a bit like they're never going to really understand because they're on site, they're on the tools, they're not actually running the business. They may never have ever had any experience in that field before. I don't think they're ever going to appreciate it to the full extent.
Because I'm sure you work like 12, 13, 14, 15-hour days sometimes, and no one ever sees that.
That's right.
From their 8-hour day. So
they'll do their 8 hours. They're expected to be there from 7:30 to 4 o'clock. They get their lunch break, and outside of that, I don't care what they do. I'm not ringing them at 8 o'clock at night, or they're not getting text messages from an owner or a phone call or anything like that. That's all that's expected of them.
Yeah. The reality is you are there.
Yep. I don't know whether there's a right answer for that. You just, I guess,
based off your experience, how could you best articulate it?
Just explain to them that kind of what I just touched on about, if I'm not back there, if I'm not in the office, if I'm not estimating the next job, mate, I need to get this proposal out. I need to finish this estimate. So you boys have got something to do. I need to go measure up this job. I've got a site meeting or I've got to go meet with an architect to potentially drum up some more work so that you guys, I can keep employing you.
Yeah. I reckon it's probably a great product idea. If somebody could invent a product that helped builders educate their team on their lives, that would be gold because it would just help the whole team understand, get onto the same page.
I reckon, and this is just the thoughts just popped back to me now. I had this conversation actually at a recent builders event. Is some of them actually bring it up they have regular toolbox meetings to actually bring, and some employees aren't going to give a shit.
Yeah.
But have a meeting with them and explain without telling, you don't need to go into the numbers and tell them what projects you got coming up, but just say, this is the build we've got coming up, this is what's in the pipeline, and get them to understand what you're working on because they don't see it. They'll only see what they're actually currently building at the time. So whether you can educate them in that way on...
So does that come through clear communication and creating a culture where everyone feels as though they're a part of the process?
Exactly. Yeah.
I worded it for you.
Done. Thank you.
So Richard, like Christmas every year, that always comes around. Under the Hammer has to come around in every episode.
Absolutely. What about we switch it up this time? We do like 3 rapid fire rather than just,
I like that. I think Luke's ready for it.
Keep you truly under the hammer, mate.
We're ready for it.
All right. So you got to pick it up.
Pick one.
Read the question and then answer it as quickly as you can. Put it down and go for the next one.
Oh, the pressure. You're not even reading me the question.
Has to be a good answer, Luke.
What are the 3 words that define your journey? Fun, challenging, successful.
Nice.
Interesting.
Good. I'm impressed. That was very quick. Well done. Any?
Next one. How do you guys blow off steam? Whoa. Fishing, mountain biking, camping, anything away from work.
Outdoors action. Yep. I like it.
Last one. What has been your favourite build/project to date? Ooh. I reckon it's probably one that's still under construction at the moment, actually. Yep. It's our biggest size or biggest duration and biggest dollar value project. It's just been a really interesting, challenging build. And I think it's sort of leaning into what I think our next topic is going to be, our most energy efficient and sustainable retrofit and renovation yet.
Wow. Okay.
Before we crack on with that, on your first hammer, your last point was success. How do you define that?
Good question. I think, this could be a long answer.
Condense it for me.
Well, it's really good timing because, I'll try not to take too long. I've been listening to an audiobook for a little while. I listened to the last, I'm not quite finished it, but a bit of it on the plane on the way here this morning. It's called The Gap and the Gain.
Yep.
I think where a lot of people go wrong is measuring success on, they may set themselves a heap of goals, and if they haven't achieved those goals, you end up in the gap. You're not taking the time to reflect back on what you have achieved to date. So the biggest thing I find is measuring the success for where you're at now. You may not have achieved all of those goals, but it's still something to work on. That's why they're called goals, because you keep working towards them. But being able to reflect back on where you were 12 months ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, wherever it was, and appreciate where you started from, the carpenter that was on the tools, working on his own, to then employing an apprentice, and then work through to now have 9 staff members and building our dream style of projects. That's what I define as success, is measuring back from where we've come from to date.
Awesome. I think that's a testament to your passion in the industry, because a lot of people might say sports car, nice boat, whatever it is, but yeah, you seem to be truly invested in it.
It's not really about the dollars. I mean, you have to make money. You can't live without it, unfortunately, in the world that we're in. But it's definitely not about the money.
That's awesome.
So I want to ask you a question about sustainable building, because it is clearly one of the genuine opportunities for builders in Australia at the moment. So it's a growth market. It's something that's going to be a big part of the future. It's inevitable that that's where the market is going to go.
Yep.
So how can builders listening to this future-proof their business and future-proof their strategic vision for where they want to go with those sorts of opportunities?
You're right. It's definitely, we're finding actually a lot of homeowners are coming to us that are educating themselves. They're asking for specific things in the home that perform better, specific materials or finishes that they actually want. So I think comes down to, there's a few options. I'll try and narrow it down to maybe 3 or 4. You're networking, asking builders that are in that space, finding out what are some of the little 1%ers that they're doing and how they shifted into that. I think one of the most important ones is to set that project up, or to set any project up for ultimate success, is a collaboration process through the design stage of the project. So as a builder, if you can collaborate with a building designer, drafty, architect, whoever it may be, collaborate with them, the homeowner and the relevant consultants, to then be able to actually steer that project to implement better building methods and those specific materials before the project has got any form of development approval. Because once it's already been designed, it's really, really hard to implement those details, and it ends up costing more money, and you're losing time because you need to redesign it once it's done, and it's a little unfair on the homeowner. So I think and whether you get any homeowners that listen to this podcast as well, but that's maybe a bit of advice for a homeowner looking to get in or wanting to build a better home as well, is collaborate early. Don't leave it too late to be able to get a builder involved in I guess, designing the home to suit it the way that you actually want it.
Are there cost-effective ways to do this?
There are, and again, I guess it comes back to, you don't have to implement all of it, as long as you're doing little incremental bits. I think the biggest bit of advice that I can give from what you should include and what you shouldn't include, whether that's a right way to look at it, but I think the biggest mistake most people make is they get focused on the material finishes, the aesthetics of what it's going to look like, your fancy finishes inside. You're missing the point of the most important thing is to get the thermal envelope correct. So you want to make sure you've got nice bulk insulation, really good glazing in your windows and external doors, ventilated cavities in your walls and your roof to be able to make sure you can get moisture out of the home. So if you're not getting the thermal envelope right from the outset, doesn't matter how fancy the home looks on the inside, if it ends up being an unhealthy indoor air quality or it's an energy consuming monster.
All right. So look, on a personal level, what would you say has been the real driver for you about sustainable building and moving in that direction?
I guess when you look at a lot of it, there's too much material that gets wasted. I was fortunate enough to actually do a little, we'll call it an excursion maybe, with our builders coaching group a little while ago. We went and toured a few factories, went out to the timber forest and the timber mill. And when you understand where products come from, how they're made, and how big the carbon footprint is of what it takes to produce materials and transport them to site, things like that, you really start to then wonder and become selective on what you're using, how you manage it, especially with what we do with a lot of the renovations and the extensions that we do. There's a lot of the original resources that generally people will just look at it and they'd go, well, knock it over and put it in a big hole in the ground. Trying to look at it from a different perspective on what out of those resources can we reuse or salvage for someone else to reuse or repurpose. Comes down to like waste management as well. When you're getting those material deliveries and things on site, about rather than just chucking it all in one bin. And again, it takes a little while to set this up because you need multiple bins on site and things like that to be able to separate your waste. You're not just throwing cardboard in cardboard, timber, bricks, everything in one bin, separating those so that your sustainable footprint, I suppose, from your waste management perspective, you can sort of divide up those resources and just again do your little 1%ers that you can, and hopefully the next bloke down the road he'll learn from that as well and try to implement it. And together, rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah. So you're really working to pay it forward for the future.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Luke, thanks for joining us today on Made to Build. It's been really, as you can see with both of us trying to jump in and ask you questions, it's been an awesome episode to really work through your experience and where you're at. And I'm sure that people listening to it will have really benefited as well. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Much appreciated.
Yeah, it's been awesome. How can our listeners get in touch with you or find your website?
So to find Callery Building, www.callerybuilding, Callery Callery, for those that are looking, callerybuilding.com.au. Otherwise, head over to Instagram, Callery Building. I do have a little side project as well with a builder from Victoria called Build Insight. Insight is INSITE. So we've collaborated to, again, try and raise the bar of the industry and share our learnings in construction of what we've got. We also have a podcast ourselves as well. So anyone that wants to jump on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and listen to the Build Insight podcast, we've got weekly episodes speaking to other builders' journeys and putting better materials and products and methods out there.
That's it for today, folks. If you've ever felt as though you have a building issue, a design flaw, or a business question, tune in fortnightly to @HIA_AU. You can find us on Instagram, Spotify, or even YouTube, and you'll be sure to learn something every single week. So thank you on behalf of Richard and I, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers, guys.